Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the October 28th meeting of the Thousand Oaks City Council. Before we begin, I would like to dedicate tonight's City Council meeting to the veterans of our country. This is our last City Council meeting before Veterans Day on November 11th, and we are very proud to have Sergeant Forbes, the Assistant Station Commander for the U.S. Marine Recruiting Office in Thousand Oaks, with us to conduct our honor guard. Can I have everybody please stand? Gentlemen. Please place your right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Veterans Day is an occasion to honor all American veterans, both living and deceased. In fact, Veterans Day is largely intended to thank our living veterans who have dedicated their loyal service to our country. November 11th of each year is the day that we ensure our 24 million veterans know that we deeply appreciate the sacrifices they have made in their lives to keep our country free. This day, originally named Armistice Day, highlights the importance of peace between nations. It is a celebration to honor America's veterans for their patriotism, love of country, and willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. We thank our honor guard for being with us tonight and for their service to our country. I would like to announce that our city will be starting a new tradition on November 10th. We are opening a military services journal. Annually, on a day designated during the business week before Veterans Day, residents will be able to come and visit City Hall and enter the names of their immediate family members who served or are serving the United States military. This tradition begins on November 10th, 2008. Interested residents are invited to visit City Hall at 2100 Thousand Oaks Boulevard between the hours of 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. We will have a registration table set up in the lobby, and members of the Hubreth Veterans Post will be here to assist residents with the registration. We hope that you will become a part of our Veterans Day recognition. Again, the Military Service Journal will be available November 10th from 9 to 4 p.m. at the Civic Arts Plaza, at 2100 Thousand Oaks Boulevard in the Shear Forum lobby. For questions, please call 805-449-2121. We will now begin the special presentation portion of tonight's City Council meeting, and I'll step to the podium. Hello. As you have heard, tonight is dedicated to our military people, so let me mention what sparked our Veterans Day recognition this year. Many heartwarming comments have been made from residents and our city employees about the pride they feel for their children serving in the military. We echo that sentiment. They have stepped forward at a difficult time in history to serve our country. We are also very proud of our City of Thousand Oaks employees who have served or are actively serving in the armed forces. In fact, we have many employees who have served tours in the Middle East. Needless to say, we think they are terrific. Tonight we have some of these great people with us. Would all the members of the audience currently serving in the armed forces please stand? And these two gentlemen are Jay Spurgeon's sons, and would you like to come down and introduce yourselves, please? Our city engineer, Jay Spurgeon's sons, and I'm sure everybody would like to meet you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sergeant James D. Spurgeon. I served from 2000 to 2004. I was a amphibious assault schools mechanic for most of my time, and I served at most of my time was at Camp Pendleton.
Good evening. My name is Sergeant Jesse T. Spurgeon, and I served from October 2003 to October 2008, and just recently out. I am a topographic intelligence specialist, deals with maps, and my tour of duty took me from all the way from Virginia to Okinawa, Japan, to Iraq in from March 07 to September 07, and ever since then I've been in Camp Pendleton, so been around.
Thank you very much. I'm sure Jay is very proud of his sons, as are we. And now I would like all our veterans to please stand. Do we have any veterans in the audience? And I would like our two council members. And again, we truly cannot thank you enough for your service to our country. Dennis, Councilmember Gillette served as a corporal in the U.S. Marines, and Mayor Pro Tem Glancy served as a captain in the Navy. Thank you. Let's give one more round of applause. And now I would like to invite one of our City of Thousand Oaks Community Development Technicians, Diane Shipton, and her husband Frank to join me at the podium. Diane is one of those proud parents I spoke of earlier. Diane's son Evan served as a chief warrant officer in the United States Army for 8 years. He served in the 101st Airborne and is currently in the 3rd Infantry Division. Evan has been deployed to Iraq 3 times and will be leaving the service in December. Frank, I know you are speaking on behalf of the family. Would you like to tell us about Evan's gift to the city, please?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
On behalf of our son, Chief Warrant Officer Evan Shipton, United States Army, and in honor of all residents and employees of the City of Thousand Oaks who are veterans or current members of the armed forces and their families, the Shipton family proudly donates this United States flag to the City of Thousand Oaks. This flag was on board the Black Hawk helicopter Our son Evan and his crew flew while performing a combat mission over Baghdad, Iraq on June 20th, 2008. And a certificate also accompanies that.
We truly appreciate that gift from the Shipton family, and we have a certificate of appreciation from the city for you, and thank you very, very much. We'll find a very nice place to display it. Yes, tonight is an evening of presentations. For our next presentation, I would like to introduce the president of the Stagecoach Museum Foundation, Jerry Knotts. Jerry, would you please join me? And Jerry is also in the Military Order of World Wars, and you're going to mention something about that too, right? Okay.
Sure am. Madam Mayor, City Council, announcement. Thanks to your very kind donation, we will be putting on our annual Veterans Day ceremony on the 11th at the Veterans Memorial behind the library. And this is done by the Military Order of the World Wars, Canal Valley Chapter, and the Di Raimondo Order, Purple Heart. And we welcome everybody to come and attend that. And we also will have the airplanes and the noise. We have the flyover from the Condor scheduled. Now, why I'm here tonight, while we're setting up, as president of the Stagecoaching Museum Foundation, I'm going to make a presentation that won't cost you a dime. That's seldom seen, right? Our mission with the Stagecoach Inn Museum Foundation is to support the Stagecoach Inn Museum by raising funds for the operation and maintenance of the facilities and the contents of the buildings. As a part of that, we like PR, and we can't think of a better way to get PR than to give to the city a beautiful original painting of the Stagecoach Inn, vintage 1876, painted by none other than Bob Rickards. I think you've heard of him. Bob, can you stand wherever you ran off to? Those who don't know him, he is probably the best Western artist we all know and love. And we have with us Jack Tucker, and all we ask is please present this to the public, display it, so everybody gets a chance to enjoy a national treasure, the Stagecoach Inn Museum.
You want to face it the other way?
No, that's fine. That's fine. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Hold on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And I do want to mention that Bob is a former 16-year city employee before retiring in 2002. For our next presentation, we are presenting a proclamation recognizing October as Colonial Heritage Month. I would like to ask Nancy Kilbourne, President of the National Society of Colonial Dames 17th Century, to please join me. The Colonial Dames, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, are comprised of 46 state societies who share a common interest in American history, respect for our nation, and historical education for our youth. Nancy, can you please tell us about your organization and the purpose of Cultural Heritage Month?
The Colonial Dames 17th Century is a national society. Women must prove descent from a colonist from 1607 to 1700. That colonist must either have owned land, been in the military, or served in the government. Once in, the organization is also a service organization, and our main objective is the is education, especially American history. And because we are colonial history, we stress 1607 to 1700. We will have a display in the Thousand Oaks Library starting November 1st. So if you want to know more about the colonial period or colonial dames, you can go look at our little display. We have a very active California group as well. The local colonial dames, our chapter meets in Santa Barbara, but most of the members live in the Caneo, so we have a carpool.
Thank you very much, Nancy. And what we have here on behalf of the entire City Council is a proclamation in honor of Colonial Heritage Month. That was a nice face I had. Thank you very much.
And this will be in the library.
And for our final presentation, I would like to introduce California Integrated Waste Management Board Member Rosalie Millet to join me. Rosalie? Oh, there you are. Welcome. One of my focuses during my term as mayor has been to continue implementing environmentally friendly projects in Thousand Oaks. Sustainability is a high priority for our residents, and going green is a high priority for the future of our nation. Ms. Millet, yes, is here to recognize the efforts of our community, is making on green issues. Can you please explain the reason for your visit?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, council members, staff, and members of your community. I'm here tonight on behalf of the California Integrated Waste Management Board. We are the state agency that primarily regulates you in terms of your AB 939 diversion requirements that is required by state law. And I'm here actually to recognize you not only for that, but recently we discovered that Thousand Oaks was named one of the 50 greenest cities in the entire United States. And we knew of your efforts with recycling programs and reuse and source reduction, but we had no idea that you had done the variety of sustainable programs that you've implemented in your community over the years. So we wanted to present you with a resolution on behalf of the board. And I do want to read the resolution because it really does recognize the depth and breadth and variety of programs that this city truly, you lead by example. And so I just want to read this very quickly. Whereas the City of Thousand Oaks has become a leader in embracing programs and day-to-day practices that support the principles of sustainability and waste reduction, and whereas Thousand Oaks has embraced alternative, non-polluting energy sources through the use of solar power to run its water treatment plant, and by capturing heat and steam to clean its wastewater, and whereas Thousand Oaks generates enough clean, green energy to supply 25% of the power used in city buildings, and whereas Thousand Oaks has helped to improve local air quality through its use of compressed natural gas-powered buses for its municipal transit system and hybrid and electric vehicles for most of its vehicle fleet, and whereas Thousand Oaks was one of the first California communities to recognize the value of using rubberized asphalt concrete as an alternative, environmentally friendly paving material for its road surfacing projects, and has used the noise reduction product to repave more than 130 miles of quiet roadways within the city. And whereas Thousand Oaks' enthusiastic support of rubberized asphalt concrete has helped to divert 1.3 million waste tires from California's landfills, whereas the model household hazardous waste drop-off program developed by Thousand Oaks has kept these products from entering the waste stream, thus protecting the environment as well as the health and safety of your residents. And whereas the conservation and waste reduction efforts undertaken in Thousand Oaks are an inspiration for other communities. Now therefore it be resolved that the California Integrated Waste Management Board commends the City of Thousand Oaks, its elected leaders, its residents, on being designated one of the 50 greenest cities in America by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. And be it further resolved that the Integrated Waste Management Board and our staff express our gratitude for the role that Thousand Oaks has played in preserving California's environment by controlling waste and litter, conserving landfill space, protecting our environment, and thus making Thousand Oaks a model community for other California's cities and counties. Presented today, October 28, 2008. Thank you very much, and congratulations on a job well done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosalie. We really appreciate the recognition, and I want to say once again that we have an incredible staff that has worked very hard to put Thousand Oaks at the forefront of being green. And I will be going back to my seat now. Okay, I guess we're going a little out of order. Can the city clerk please do the roll call?
Councilmember Fox. Councilmember Gillette.
Here.
Councilmember Bill De La Pena.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Glancy.
Here.
Mayor Irwin.
Here. Item 4, request for continuance of any public hearing or agenda item. None. And now we are on to item 6, public comments. Can the city clerk please announce public comments?
This is the time and place for public comments. A speaker card is available for those wishing to address the City Council regarding items on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction. Pursuant to council standards of operation, the mayor may assist any speaker from straying into areas not within the city's jurisdiction. All remarks should be addressed to the council as a whole. Under state law, issues discussed under public comments can have no action unless listed on the agenda and may be referred to the city manager for administrative action or scheduled on a subsequent agenda. All documents for city council and the official city record should be presented to the city clerk prior to speaking, and speakers are requested to state their name and city of residence for the record. 10 people have presented cards, and pursuant to council standards, speakers are allowed 3 minutes. The yellow light displays when you have 1 minute remaining.
Our first speaker this evening is our chief, Dennis Carpenter. Police chief, yes.
Yes, Dennis Carpenter, Police Chief. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. I'm here tonight to introduce to you Karen Wold, our new Senior Deputy District Attorney assigned as a Community Prosecutor for the City of Thousand Oaks. Karen received her bachelor's degree from the University of Denver in 1984 and her Juris Doctorate degree in 1987 from Loyola Law School. She was admitted to the California Bar in 1987. She joined the District Attorney's Office in September of 2000. Prior to that time, Ms. Wold practiced civil litigation in the County of Los Angeles, specializing in the defense of individuals and organizations in the areas of employment litigation, medical malpractice, products liability, and business litigation. Since joining the District Attorney's Office, she has been assigned to the General Misdemeanor Trials Unit, the Misdemeanor Domestic Violence Unit, and Consumer Environmental Protection Unit. In September 2003, she was assigned full-time to obtaining the first civil gang injunction in Ventura County. That injunction against the Colonia Chicas, the largest and most violent organization in Ventura County, was issued by the court and made permanent in 2005. Ms. Wold then obtained a second injunction against the Southside Chicas, which was issued and made permanent in October 2006. In 2007, Ms. Wold was assigned to prosecute hate crimes throughout the county. as well as prosecuting gang crimes that occurred in the city of Ventura. In August of 2008, she was assigned as our 5th community prosecutor for the city of Thousand Oaks. And I want to introduce to you now Karen Wold. Her husband is a senior supervising deputy district attorney in sexual assault unit in Ventura.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening. I'm extremely excited to be assigned as the Thousand Oaks community prosecutor. I live in Thousand Oaks, which means that I care about the crime that occurs here because this is my city. I have 3 children that go to school in the city. Next year, 1 will be in high school, 1 will be in middle school, and 1 will be in elementary school here. So I'm actively involved with the Thousand Oaks Police Department, working in programs to help the schools. I'm involved in every aspect, and I'm extremely happy to be here. So thank you.
Thank you and welcome. Our second speaker is Julia Francis, and Julia will be followed by Elizabeth Smith. Good evening, Ms. Francis.
Good evening, Mayor Irwin. My name is Julia Francis. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks, and I do have copies of what I'm going to be speaking about being passed out. I'm here on behalf of the Program Advisory Board of Roots and Wings. Over the last month, Council has heard from many concerned citizens in our community regarding the proposed change of operatorship at the city-owned child care center. In late November, early December, the Finance Department plans to bring before Council one alternative for the future of the city child care program. Many have expressed dismay at the lack of a convincing objective on the part of city planners for this operator change and no clearly demonstrated benefit. Oh, you can't hear me. Is that better? Okay, thank you. Many have expressed dismay at the lack of a convincing objective on the part of the city for this operator change and no clearly demonstrated benefit from the planned change has been expressed. Our community deserves a win-win solution that benefits all parties concerned and still meets the final objective of the city to build alliances with the school district. The program administrators, parents, and staff would like to request consideration of alternative scenarios which would represent better all-around solutions. We're here to discuss one potential solution tonight. Due to a business conflict, Sherry LeBoon could not be here tonight to present with us, but this option for consideration was developed with all of us together. We feel the Finance Department proposal represents a win-lose scenario. The only clear winner is the Conejo Valley School District and Conejo Valley Neighborhoods for Learning, who will receive the use of the city facility at the same terms as the current operator. They would also obtain over $600,000 in state grant funds annually, for which no prior effort has been expended. The Neighborhood for Learning would benefit when the city spends general fund dollars to refurbish and equip the soon-to-be vacated city center. Over 200 children currently served at the 2 Roots and Wings facility, and the long-standing, well-respected Roots and Wings businesses are the true losers. 60 children at Calle Tulipan facility would be forced out of their center. Many families at the city center location are now looking for alternative programs to serve their children, as the Conejo Valley Neighborhood for Learning does not have prior experience serving infants, toddlers, or preschoolers in full-day, full-year child care programs. 36 staff members are having their jobs greatly disrupted. Many of the staff do not have confidence that NFL will be the right place for them to seek employment after the operator change. The community loses one of only 4 accredited child care facilities in Thousand Oaks. It will be several years before Conejo Valley NFL would be eligible to obtain this sought-after quality achievement. Roots and Wings, a highly regarded and long-standing small business in the community, stands to fail, as the original facility could end up vacant when all the children are transferred out.
Thank you, Ms. Francis. Our next speaker is Elizabeth Smith, and Ms. Smith will be followed by Kathy Summers.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Elizabeth Smith, and I have lived in Thousand Oaks for over 10 years. We'd like to propose a following win-win solution. The city enters into a partnership with the CVUSD and the CVNFL and subcontracts 25% of the state grant funds in 2009 and 2010 and 50% in 2010 through 2011, as well as 2011 through 2012. All the full-day funding will be transferred in year one. This will allow the children served at Calle Tulipan to finish their preschool education without relocation and help the NFL gain experience managing the complex state grant requirements over time. In 2009, NFL opens a full-day infant, toddler, and preschool programs at one or more existing new locations on a small scale to gain experience with these unique programs and to serve a model for the community. Operating hours and teacher-to-child ratios would follow those currently in place at the city center. Our IE philosophy of infant and toddler child-giving practices will be a cornerstone of the curriculum. CVNFL applies for national accreditation immediately and receives validation within 2 years. Conejo Valley NFL has 3 years to obtain the funds to furnish and equip the new facility at no expense to the City of Thousand Oaks general funds. These funds could be generated through the new program incomes. Conejo Valley NFL and Roots and Wings co-locate for 3 months from June through August of 2012. At this point, the Roots and Wings smaller private facility will be fully established as a private, non-state funded school. If a new facility for Roots and Wings is in place, students wishing to move can be transferred in June, if not earlier. The city leases the city facility to Conejo Valley Unified School District /NFL to begin late August 2012. Roots and Wings is granted a transitional 3-year, 2-month lease until late August 2012 at the current terms. This allows for all but 6 of the more than 200 children now enrolled to finish their preschool education in continuity of care and go on to kindergarten with the current child care operator. All newly enrolled families will be notified and sign written acknowledgement of the child care operator change in August 2012 as a term of enrollment. I will now hand it over to Kathy to finish our proposal.
Thank you. Kathy Summers.
Hi, 12-year resident of Westlake Village in Thousand Oaks. Just to finish the proposal, families can visit the new NFL programs and see the operations firsthand, allowing them to make informed decisions about the transition when selecting child care. NFL can market the success of this pilot while enrolling students at the city center location. Parents can feel confident in the care being given by NFL through observation of infant, toddler, and preschooler care offered in a full-day, full-year setting. The 6 infants who will be 4 years old in 2012 will have many options, including staying at the center, moving to Roots and Wings' other location, or time to be on a waiting list for another quality program of their parents' selection. Roots and Wings will have more time to try to find a new location. This may be difficult, if not impossible, but 3 years would be the time needed to develop a new location should a site be located. Roots and Wings, a local small business, is not forced out of business. Roots and Wings has time to rebuild clientele at the small location, which has been used for 10 years almost exclusively as a state preschool serving low-income children. Time and advertising to change the demographic of the small school site from a state-subsidized preschool to a daycare for full-time working parents. As state funds are transferred to the school district and NFL, market rate parents can fill any openings. Very quickly, just to summarize, I guess overall we believe that this is a win-win-win-win-win solution and that all the stakeholders become winners. The city meets its long-term objective of increasing partnership with the school district. The school district and NFL ultimately obtain the city building, assume all state grant funds, become accredited, and gain valuable experience that can be transferred to the city program in 2012. The NFL has furthered the goal of more programs at school sites. The community gains more, not fewer, accredited facilities and more infant, toddler, and full-day preschool spaces. The parents have an opportunity to gain confidence in NFL's abilities to provide infant, toddler, and preschooler care offered in a full-day, full-year setting. Roots and Wings has time to reverse the current public-private model and return to profitability in the market-driven sector without risking business failure as a result of their long-standing city partnership. The children and parents gain consistency over the preschool years by remaining with teachers, peers, and programs that they've grown up with. The City Center staff gain confidence that NFL is a provider with a wide range of services for children. And the City Council is commended in selecting a wise and inclusive alternative that promotes more options which bring value to the community. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Jamie Fellows, followed by Jared Hatland.
Good evening. My name is Janie Fellows, and I've lived in Thousand Oaks for 15 years. And I have been an infant caregiver at Roots and Wings since the center opened. I was fortunate to be able to assist Sherry Laboon in setting up the infant room and saw firsthand how the depth of her knowledge and her many years of hands-on experience was going to benefit Roots and Wings infants, toddlers, and preschoolers far beyond any other program in the Conejo Valley. Out of Sherry's desire to run a high-quality program with teachers who are up to date on the latest brain research and the most effective practices, it was her priority that we all attend the California Association for the Education of Young Children's conference even before the school opened, and it has been an ongoing priority for the past 10 years. During those years, I have come to understand why Sherry felt it was so necessary to have 4 different kinds of lighting in the infant room, double the amount of space required by licensing, open ceilings to stimulate young imaginations, and separate heating and air conditioning systems to ensure germs were not shared. I learned why we established the practice of doing home visits before each child started, where we not only began building a relationship, but also assured each family that their personal values and individual ways of interacting with their child would be continued through us. This is clearly not your typical run-of-the-mill child care center or program. There's no question that Neighborhoods for Learning provides a valuable and necessary program that serves many families in our community, and there are currently 6 operating sites. But it is also a fact that there is another cross-section of our community that does not require the programs offered by NFL and are in need of the program Roots and Wings provides. Some of these families specifically moved to our area and were on a waiting list for 2 years to get into this program because they felt it was the only right program for their family. How can we, in clear conscience, disregard the needs of some while furthering the needs of others? Shouldn't our city officials be committed to serving all the families in our community equally, even if their needs may be different from one another? And if the long-range goal is for Neighborhoods for Learning to evolve into a program like Roots and Wings, then I believe a better approach would be to have Roots and Wings continue to operate for the time being and allow us to participate in the evolution of this long-range plan. Anyone who works with children is aware that they relate to the people around them on an emotional level. What you may not be aware of, however, is the amount of stress we are seeing in our very young children since this proposed change was made public. It is impossible to have a smooth transition between 2 programs that are so innately different unless everyone involved is working together towards a common goal, the good of our children. Doesn't it make more sense, and wouldn't it be more effective, to work together towards this long-range goal? With all of us participating, we could create...
You're going to need to wrap it up, please.
I'm on my last sentence.
Okay.
With all of us participating, we could create a transition process that is gradual and systematic, and that would truly be in the best interest of all of our community's children and their families. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Jared Hatland, followed by Debbie Gregory. Hello, Jared.
Hi. Good evening, Mayor Irwin, council members, and staff. My name is Jared Hatland, and I'm a member of the Thousand Oaks Youth Commission, and this year I am chairing the 9th annual Rock the Oaks concert with Commissioner Sean McMinn. We would like to announce that we are now accepting applications through November 7th, 2008 from all local bands for consideration to perform in the Rock the Oaks concert to be held right here in the Sheer Forum Theater February 27th, 2009 at 7:30 p.m. The event is a teen rock concert featuring performances from 4 local rock bands. It is a great event, and with new staging and general admission this year, we would hope to have a full house. So we want to get a message out to the bands to get your applications in early and get all your friends to buy your tickets before we're sold out. Band applications are available in many locations on the city website at www.toaks.org, at City Hall, the Alex Fior Teen Center, libraries, or you can email youthcommission@toaks.org or call 805-449-2743. And don't forget, applications are due before November 7th, 2008 at 5 p.m. Tickets are now on sale at the box office or at Ticketmaster.com, and they're only $15, which is a good bit less than most other venues. And on behalf of the Thousand Oaks Youth Commission, as always, we'd like to say thanks to City Council, the Civic Arts Plaza Foundation, and the Alliance for the Arts for making this event possible. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jared. Debbie Gregory, followed by Holly LaRue.
Good evening. I'm Debbie Gregory. I'm a resident, and I'd like to take this opportunity. I'm also the CEO of MilitaryConnection.com. I want to thank all those who serve in the city, past and present veterans, and their families for their service and for their many sacrifices. I'd also like to congratulate the city on the registry and ask them to consider to step it up a notch and maybe put in bins for much-needed comfort items that could be sent to deployed soldiers. There are many organizations that I work with that can pick it up and offset any cost of postage. It certainly would be something to consider, and people who come to City Hall could make the donation so there wouldn't be any fiscal cost to the city. On another note, speaking of fiscal, I'd like to talk about money. Thousand Oaks pays very well, and we have very good employees. However, I'm concerned because when council members serve only 5 years, they're entitled to world-class insurance for life for themselves and all of their dependents. I don't know of one private corporation that provides this extraordinary benefit. If Mrs. Irwin and Dr. Glancy are elected, they will be eligible to receive better health insurance at taxpayer expense than any of us can afford for essentially a part-time job. This needs to change, and neither did Mrs. Irwin or Dr. Glancy make any effort to change it to date. Maybe after they get their benefits, they will support change. At the last meeting, Mrs. Irwin stated that not that many people take this benefit. I don't think that's the point. The point is that there's liability because there's a lot of people that are eligible for the benefit, and they can get it at any time they so choose. It's a huge potential financial liability. I strongly recommend that if you don't want them to have better health care than you can afford, then vote for someone else and lobby to change this giveaway. These are difficult economic times. People are losing their jobs, their retirements, their homes. Restaurants are closing. People are being laid off. The bottom line is the city revenues are significantly dropping, and you don't spend more money when you have less coming in. On October 7th, 4 council members, including Mrs. Irwin and Dr. Glancy, approved significant raises for the city manager and city attorney. This is not about whether or not they deserve them. They are both already highly paid. The city manager makes more than the Vice President of the United States, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, any U.S. Senator or member of Congress. Mrs. Irwin stated that he's in line with Ventura County, but the cities that he was compared to are full-service cities with their own police and fire departments. I guess they can raise fees and taxes and reduce services so that we have the highest paid public officials in the land, and we can have lifetime insurance for those who serve 5 years part-time. But I don't think it's right.
Thank you, Ms. Gregory. Holly LaRue, followed by Barbara Klossner. Good evening, Ms. LaRue.
Hello, my name is Holly LaRue, and I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks and a city council candidate. I'm here tonight to introduce my plan for a Thousand Oaks Boulevard trolley. The idea is to run it, initially anyway, from the promenade to the Oaks Mall and make stops along the way. Inside the trolley, there would be maps highlighting the shops, restaurants, and other businesses on the boulevard. The trolley would be an attractive and viable option for public transportation, and some of the many benefits would include increasing pedestrian traffic, reducing automobile traffic, which would in turn reduce air pollution. It would support local business by indicating them on the map, increase sales tax revenues to the city by helping to create a more enjoyable family shopping experience, provide students a means of transportation other than being chauffeured by mom and dad. The trolley is also an incentive that complies with Senate Bill 375. SB 375 by Darrell Steinberg and signed into law by the governor requires the regional governing bodies to adopt, as part of their regional transportation plan, a sustainable community strategy that will meet the region's target for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The bill calls for creating incentives by allocating federal transportation funds only to projects that are consistent with the emissions reductions. A trolley along the boulevard is a perfect match for the criteria established in SB 375. Funding options to consider include Transportation Development Act funds, gas tax funds, and federal and state grants. Some items needing further study are, would we lease or purchase a trolley and the costs involved in doing so, grants and other funding available to cover those costs. If successful, should we have more than one trolley running as they do in Ojai? Of course, with any good idea, there are always questions, possible glitches, and some risk involved. I believe that timing is a big factor in achieving success, and that the timing right now is very good. Due to the stressed economy, people are traveling less and looking for ways to enjoy what their community has to offer. We already have much of the infrastructure for this plan to move forward quickly. We have attractive bus stops, the new transportation center, and bus drivers. Let's see if we can come together and dot the I's and cross the T's and give our residents and business owners something exciting and new for Thousand Oaks Boulevard. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LaRue. Barbara Kloster, followed by Nick Kidway. Hello, Ms. Kloster.
Barbara Kloster of Thousand Oaks. Mayor Irwin, City Council members and staff. I'm here for a different reason tonight. Our son, Michael Kloster, was a victim of the Metrolink crash on September 12th. He is still in the hospital, but he's finally out of intensive care. He suffered horrific injuries and will be a long time recovering. It will be 7 weeks on Friday, and we still don't know when he will be home. He has a wife, Christy, a son, Michael, 11, and an 8-year-old daughter, Sophia, who has diabetes. Mike graduated in 1978 from Thousand Oaks High School and still has all his friends from elementary school and up. Our grandson, Jason, and several of Mike's good friends are putting on a benefit golf tournament on November 16th at Los Robles Greens Golf Course to help his family through the rough times ahead. There will be flyers at the front lobby. If it wasn't for the persistence of his coworker and good friend, Dave Dolnick, also a resident of Thousand Oaks, our son wouldn't be alive today. Dave wouldn't leave him on the train till help arrived, and when he found him on the triage area, he managed to get a fireman to see how terribly injured he was. He was suffering from upper abdominal trauma. He was the first one to be medevaced to UCLA, where all the top-notch doctors were waiting for him. This week, the doctor said he is a miracle man just to have survived. We can always use more participants at the tournament and items for the raffle and silent auction. My phone number is 494-8755, and the other phone numbers and email addresses are on the flyer. By the way, though I wasn't there, I want to thank all of you out there who participated in Day of the Horse. I heard it was wonderful. And I also want to remind you not to forget to vote. Thank you all.
Thank you, Barbara, and our prayers are with the recovery of your son. I know it's been a very difficult time for you and your family. Mr. Kidway?
I begin in the name of God, who is most beneficial, most merciful. My name is Nick Iqbal Kidwai. I'm a resident of Newbury Park. And Dr. Glancy, last time I checked, still Director of Concerned City of Thousand Oaks. I ran as soon as I got my mail and tried to get here on time because I got this Hannah Beth Jackson kidnaps Elvis. I mean, I'm an Elvis fan. I mean, so the mystery can be solved. And he's already gone. I talked to the chief and told him about it. Hopefully we will get Elvis back. I want to remind the council that all 5 council members support Mr. Strickland, who is sending out the garbage that so many people are fed up with. I would like TOTV to help me with the overhead. That is a home at the corner of Wendy Drive and Borchard Road. It has 2 signs. It's difficult to see in the small size, but your ordinance does not allow 2 signs if they are closer than 100 feet, and I measured it, it's 72 feet. I sent the facts and information to the city. This is unbelievable. I've sold signs for a company in the county. I mean, the resolution for the sign ordinance is not on the website, but believe me, one of the fundamentals, TOTV, if you can show that again, Mr. Fox had a sign there before. This is on the roof of Roy's Towing. No sign is permitted on any roofs. I mean, that's a cardinal rule, and it's horrible that, and I'll show you another one. This is open space. There's 3 signs that the mayor has. I know the mayor is not doing this. They are enthusiastic supporters, but they need to be stopped. And I hope that, I mean, the thing that really bugs me and a lot of other people is that here you are lawmakers, and then you are lawbreakers. I mean, how can people have respect when these things kind of go on? And TOTV, I am using you in yellow light already. I showed a graffiti of the Auto Mall sign, which was there for months. This thing has been there for 6 months, Mayor. It's right on the as you drive on 101. And nobody, I mean, I told staff last time also about this. And if they had any questions about which building it was, they should have called me. But I mean, yeah, the council member was crying that the 23 could not get graffiti abatement. I went on the website, a project that costs $2 million, the graffiti abatement is $50,000. I would implore Ms. Delapini or someone to have a report to see how we can do it, because 3 years for the graffiti for a vine to grow is not enough. My time is up. You really should go back to 5 minutes like the good old days.
Mr. Kidway, where is the graffiti at the Auto Mall?
The Auto Mall has been taken care of. This building is, I don't want to advertise it, it's the Natron building. They are, in fact, coming to City Hall for some kind of a SUP even. So I thought maybe that would have stopped it. It's just before you get the off-ramp for Hampshire.
Thank you, Mr. Kidway. Do you have any comments, Mr. Mitnick? Follow-up?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I note 3 items to comment on. We heard from a few speakers about the Thousand Oaks Child Care Center issue, and that information presented will be taken into consideration by staff as when it makes its presentation to council on that issue in either late November or December. We heard a speaker about medical insurance for council members. I do want to clarify and remind council that This is a benefit that is made available to council members upon their retirement, provided they've reached the age of 50 or older. If they retire or if they stop their service to the city and go on to another governmental agency, in essence, they do not retire from here, they're not eligible for that benefit. And as mentioned, there are only 3 council members or former council members or their family members who currently have that benefit, with the most recent one being Mr. Masry's former wife. When Mr. Masry left city service after 5 years and a few days, he was eligible for that benefit. He did receive it, and when he passed away, it transferred to his wife. And even though she's remarried, it still is provided to her per the terms of the agreement. So again, it's optional for the council members, but you do have to be 50 years of age and retire from city service. Political signs and graffiti. I have been sharing with council, we have been struggling with political signs this season. It is that time of year. This happens every other year. And there are a number of signs being placed and removed and then placed again on public property, and in particular street medians, parkways, intersections on public property and in the open space. And we're doing our best. We remove them as quickly as possible, but it's like trying to remove ants from the top of an anthill. We remove them and the signs go right back. But we are working with those candidates and their campaign managers to the best of our ability. With respect to the private property issues raised, we appreciate Mr. Kidway making us aware of those. We'll investigate those and any others that do come in, but those tend to be private property issues. We will follow up. And then on the graffiti issue, we did have an update to the council on the 23 Freeway project and the sound walls, landscaping and graffiti. That is getting better. Caltrans is being more responsive. But in general, I would like to remind that speaker and everybody in the audience, we have a graffiti hotline. That number is 449-2488. So 449-2488. It's also on the city website. So please do call that number. We take pride in removing graffiti as quickly as possible, ideally within 24 hours. Right, Mr. Watkins? Thank you. So with that, that concludes city manager comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitnick. City and Redevelopment Agency consent calendar. Ms. Bill de la Pena.
I would like to pull item 7C, and if there are no further questions, I will move the remainder of the calendar.
Councilmember Gillette.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to pull item 7G.
Okay. Vote on, so can you restate then, please?
I move to approve the consent calendar with the exception of items C and G.
Vote, please.
Mayor, we do have a speaker on the consent calendar.
Oh, yes, thank you for reminding me. Mr. Kidway, I apologize.
Nick Iqbal Kidwai, resident of Newbury Park, Director, Concerned City of Thousand Oaks. Honorable Mayor, I must tell you, it is difficult to watch this stuff on the laptop and not come here, and I've done that for the last 3 meetings. It's horrible that there's no improvement, so somebody has to come over here. Some people think it's stupid to try to talk about these things. I mean, what's the point? I mean, it's pulling from the consent calendar is not the issue. You have to, I mean, like they say at the national level, I mean, you have to really reinvent the government. I mean, and start from the bottom up. The minutes. I could use the overhead, but I think it's not necessary. This is the minute from October 21, 1997 of this body. This is one page filled with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11 speakers that spoke, and 1 or 2 sentences as to what they discussed. Council member Zina discussed Council member Zina's record and stated recall effort was waste of time and funds. Raul Gutierrez, Thousand Oaks purported harassment toward petition signature gatherers, etc. This is the latest minutes that we have for September 23. And I write disgraceful minutes. I mean, it's disgraceful. I mean, people come over here, some of the other people have left that claim that this city is the best. The city people are the best, but the government is lousy. I mean, what are these minutes? The minutes are Police Chief Carpenter spoke in public comments, he lives in Thousand Oaks. Diana Marshalia, Thousand Oaks. Wayne Davey, Camarillo. Richard Elsie. Most of them talked about the issue that was discussed earlier, which was the roots and wings. If you read the minutes, you cannot get anything as to what is happening. You have to go on, listen to the tapes or something like that. This is completely un-American, and nobody on the council has the courage, even the minority people, to ask that these minutes should be changed and reflect. I mean, Mr. Fox is an assistant fire chief and stuff like that. I'm sure in Los Angeles they don't have minutes like this. And then I come back to the two other items, E and F. I mean, you're going to square manholes. I mean, it might seem like a simple thing, but why no discussion? I mean, consent calendar is not for to have a discussion. Why are you going to square manholes from round manholes? I mean, there should be a discussion, and it should not be in the consent calendar. So that's why I changed it, and I've given a copy over here. These should be under the department reports like 9A, which is city's financial report. This thing, as well as the additional appropriation and expenditures, should be under department reports. And then if nobody speaks, fine. I mean, but this is not the way to run the government. I mean, I wish my friend Sarah would come over here and take care of this body. We need some mavericks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kidway. There was a motion. That is to move the consent calendar except for items 7C and 7G. Vote, please.
Motion carries 5-0.
Ms. Bilda-Lapina, 7C.
Thank you. I'm not quite certain who would answer the question. Perhaps the right people are on the panel here regarding the approval of $15,000 to install artwork in front of the Newberry Park Library. We have a discussion coming up next, a public hearing on our financial strategic plan. $15,000 may not seem like a lot of money, and I understand that you have to also show art appreciation. Is it perhaps premature to approve this particular project at this time, given the presentation that we are about to receive, which does not paint a rosy picture of the economic future of Thousand Oaks? I mean, I really appreciate the art, but I'm a little hesitant about spending $15,000 right now to install the artwork, the sculptures, which, by the way, are quite beautiful.
This is an Arts Commission recommendation that we're implementing, and it's really up to council to decide if they feel it's a priority.
I understand it is a recommendation by the Arts Commission, but from a financial standpoint, where obviously you also mentioned the accounts where it would be coming from, where the money would be coming from, do you feel that perhaps those $15,000 could be better used elsewhere?
We had savings from another account that wasn't spent, so that's where this funding is coming from. It's already in the budget. So we're not asking for any additional money at this point.
I understand. Now that we accepted, obviously, the artwork to be on loan. It's not permanent artwork. The sculptures are not permanent. Is it possible at all to, I mean, what happens if we don't install them the way they're supposed to be installed? What happens with the artwork?
There are 5 pieces of artwork, 2 indoors, which don't need foundations, and 3 outdoors, which, based on review by the city's facilities division and by the city attorney, do require concrete bases for the safe installation of the 3 outside pieces of artwork. I don't believe we could install them without the foundations. The foundations would be there permanently, so if and when the artwork is removed, other public artwork could be of similar size could be installed on those foundations.
That would require us to accept a loan of artwork, but there's also a possibility that that might not happen, and we could have these concrete stands vacant for some amount of time.
The artwork has already been accepted, has been offered, and was accepted by the council on May 29th, 2007. And staff was directed then to implement how we would actually display them. And that's what we're coming back for tonight, is we're going to move one from the Newberry Park Library to the Civic Arts Plaza grounds because it has a better viewing shed. And we need to construct these concrete foundations in order to properly anchor and display the artwork.
Okay, is the artwork then on loan indefinitely?
No, it's for a period of 5 years.
Okay, so what happens after 5 years? We don't happen to have artwork waiting in line to replace the ones that we're losing.
We'd hope that we would have artwork in place. I don't have an exact answer for that. We anticipate, I mean, this is in a sense a very inexpensive way to get artwork outside because we're not buying it. It's being loaned to us. It is possible that a donor would come forward, purchase the artwork, and donate it to the city. That is one option. But if that does not happen, the artwork would be removed. We would still have the concrete bases, and we would be able to install, hopefully, other artwork that would be recommended by the Arts Commission and approved by the City Council.
Could we delay action on this until perhaps we have received the presentation? And it's not a major expenditure, I realize that, but I'm a little concerned. That's why I'm wondering whether we could hold off on this until the next meeting, just to make sure that we don't have any more pressing items that perhaps should have priority. Mr. Mitzi.
Well, if the council decides not to approve this, then clearly we will not proceed with the installation of the public artwork. So, I mean, I believe we could bring this back if that was the desire of the council.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, the money for the stand has already been identified. There's not a budget impact associated with it. I would encourage council to be supportive of your Arts Commission, who worked long and hard on this, and the art community and the artists in particular. So it's not a budgetary issue from our perspective. If council has concerns about that, you might want to rethink your support for the arts and the arts program in general.
Dr. Glancy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Mitzi, I know we've had some vandalism of artwork that's being displayed outside in the past. How often does it happen? What's the risk of it's happening with anything additionally that's placed outside? Are there measures taken to protect ourselves and the artwork against it?
We did have an instance of vandalism with the Hubert work, and that was repaired by the original artists. The city attorney is developing an agreement with the sculptor Alexander. He will be carrying insurance on the work so that if there is some vandalism, hopefully not, it would not be the city's liability.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Fox?
I move 7C.
Vote, please.
Motion carries 4-0 with Councilmember Bill de la Pena abstaining.
Councilmember Gillette, 7G.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 7G on page 100 of the council packet. I've been advised that this item does not require recusal since this is there's no public money involved in this thing. This is a repair and a correction of a situation that was created by a private entity. Nevertheless, the street affected by this is my street, and so that someone doesn't downstream take this out of context and ask why I participate, and this is just easier at this point for me to recuse, so I will recuse from 7G.
Thank you.
Move 7G.
Vote, please.
Motion carries 4-0. Councilmember Gillette recused.
We have no public hearings this evening, so we will move on to department reports. Item 9A, the City Financial Strategic Plan Update, and we'll start with our City Manager, Scott Mitnick.
Okay, Madam Mayor, members of the council, I'll provide some introductory and background comments, and then I'll turn it over to Candy Hong, our Finance Director. Both she and John Adams, our Deputy Finance Director, will do the presentation to the council. We are indeed delighted to be here to provide you this overview of the city's financial situation and the financial strategic plan. In essence, there's 4 components here. One, my introductory comments, and then 2, the staff will spend some time talking about the fiscal year that ended 07-08 and give the final results of that. And they'll then talk about the current budget that we're in, the gap closing strategies that were done to balance the budget this year, and give you some revised year-end projections for this year's budget, this year being fiscal year 2008-09, and then a 10-year projection overview of where we're going from 2008-09 through the fiscal year 2017-2018. I'd like to remind council that there's a long history leading up to the financial strategic plan process that we use. It was something in the works for a couple decades, actually. And then in 2002, staff came forward to council suggesting that we take a look at doing this, because too often what happens in local government and with many corporations in the private sector is you're just looking quarter to quarter, year to year. Cities seldom slow down and say, okay, where are we going over the next 5 to 10 years? Cities may do it with their capital projects for 5 years or so. So we decided, and council concurred and gave us direction, to go out, hire a consultant, and do the long-term view. We did that. We hired Davis Consulting out of Sacramento. It took 2 or 3 years, I think, to get that plan in place. And then that was presented to council in February of 2005. That, for those of you who remember, was a very useful exercise. It was not just a report that was printed and stayed on the shelf. It did identify that we had some staffing challenges going forward as we were at that time making the transition from a growth-oriented city to a maintenance-oriented city. So we realized we're going to have problems with the library department in terms of staffing through its expansion, and the police department. And so we were able to slow down the sort of growth in those areas and in other departments. And since that time, we have not added any net new bodies. So we've really kind of kept the bureaucracy at bay as a result of that. So again, it served as a very useful tool. Let me just remind council that in order to get to where we are now, the update to that plan, we've had at least 9 meetings, including this one, over the last year. 9 meetings in front of you in terms of dealing with budget, financial, or investment issues. A year ago, over a year ago in June, we came to council with the 2-year budget, had the public hearing and 2-year budget, and council had directed us to update the financial strategic plan. Some of you will remember, you as council members had a specific interest in looking out and better understanding what's happening in the local economy. So in response to that, we had a menu of things that we would do over the fiscal year, and we've done that. In November of 07, we presented that menu and gave an overview of what we would do. In January of 2008, you'll recall we had a demographics overview. We hired a demographics expert from Northern California. He did a comprehensive analysis of who we are as a community. It was very telling. It talked about the aging of the population and our sales tax or our consumption habits and where we're going and what it means to revenues, what's happening with the school population, and so on. And he gave you a long-term view of that. And after that, in February of 2008, we gave you the final fiscal year 2006-07 financials and gave an overview of our sales tax revenues, and we had our consultants, experts in sales tax, help tell you what's going on and their projections. And they were pretty much right on the money, and they told you that sales taxes would level off and decline, and that's where we're at. But we are in pretty decent shape in comparison to others. Then we, in February, a month later, and this was a report that was in the works for a while, we hired 2 local economists to give an overview of the local Thousand Oaks economy. We had professors from Cal Lutheran and UCSB do an overview of our economy, and then they had some various scenarios for you. And we're going to come back in January with an update to at least one of those scenarios. In May, we provided a comprehensive update on our capital improvement program and our infrastructure throughout the community. We had a 10-year CIP projection That's more than most local governments do in a 15-year facilities maintenance program. Remember, we have over $1 billion worth of public assets that we're in charge of. And then in July, we came back to council because we had a budget gap challenge. We had to cut $4 million out of the general fund budget. Department heads, looking at most of them now, they rose to the occasion. They did it. We put forward those recommendations to make sure that we end this fiscal year in the black. So I want to acknowledge that. And then we did that in July. Then last month, or earlier this month, excuse me, October 14th, we had a comprehensive update on the city investments situation. We're in the black. We have no losses whatsoever on paper or in reality. We're one of the few agencies around that can say that. So tonight, we have the financial strategic plan update, and then we'll come back to council in January with the final financial strategic plan, and that will serve as the starting point for the next 2-year budget cycle, 2010, and then 2010-2011. And then there'll be a public hearing on that budget in June of 2009. So before I turn it over, I just want to reiterate that the City of Thousand Oaks continues to be in good financial shape. There are challenges at the national and state level with the economy. We're not immune to that. Our revenues are down, but within what we have anticipated. We've made the reductions on the expenditure side. We're in the black. We're not deficit spending. We're not using reserves for operations. We are not using reserves for operations. You'll hear about how we're having to slow down a little bit on some of our capital projects, but we have plenty of resources in the bank to take care of our capital projects and our needs. Strong council leadership, competent staff, a committed workforce to doing more with less. We've cut a number of vacant positions, and we'll continue to do that in order to make sure the budget is balanced. So while we do have financial challenges in the future, and Candy and John will touch on that, I want to just end by saying the financial strategic plan is working well. We maintain a balanced budget. We maintain healthy reserves. Our investments are secure. The financial policies that you've approved and stuck to and revised accordingly over the years are serving the community very well. The stability on the council has been very helpful, and that helps ensure that the city remains ready for the future. So we feel that the long term, our economy looks good, our future looks rosy and bright. We're just going through a difficult patch at the moment. So with that, I want to turn it over to Candy Hong.
Madam Mayor and council members, tonight's presentation is organized into several sections, as Scott mentioned. We're going to be talking about 2007-8 results, which I'm really proud of my staff to pull this together and actually been able to incorporate in the financial strategic plan this early in the year. So they're going to be, that's the first thing that John's going to talk about, and then he's going to also go on to how we are looking for 2008 fiscal year, how our budgets and our projections look, and then I'll follow up with sharing with you about the financial strategic plan and our preliminary results of the plan going forward 10 years. As Scott mentioned, the 2005 financial strategic plan served us well and resulted in sound financial management going forward. We had a successful first financial strategic plan, and it provided us a good roadmap for budget discussions. And council pointed out and directed that in 2007 that a new financial strategic plan was needed. We were beginning to already see financial times changing, our assumptions needed updating, and a new plan be developed. Scott went through our calendar. We've had 8 meetings with you now, counting today, going over all those phases of the financial strategic plan. And our path now is to present to you something in January in advance of the 2-year budget cycle so that you have an idea of what we're seeing going forward, and it will help us in our decision-making process. The previous plan only dealt with the financial plan, dealt with only the general fund. And this current financial strategic plan includes all funds, and we're going to share how they affect each other and also the general fund as well. The budget and financial organization is complex. We've got not only the general fund, but special revenue funds, which include our library, gas tax, and lighting and landscaping districts. We've got debt service funds that have the public financing authority in there, and then we've got capital project funds, which include developer fees and traffic signal fees. In addition, we've got business-type funds. These funds tend to be self-supporting, with the exception of the Transportation Fund and the Theaters Fund in the past. But these both have required either a general fund subsidy or some other subsidy from other funds in the case of the Transportation Fund. So in this plan, we're mindful of the complexity of city funds, that we've got employees that are allocated over a number of different funds. We've got funds and programs that are interrelated. We have transfers in and out between funds, and they affect the general fund. And we have capital and maintenance projects that can be multi-funded. To put the city structure into perspective and to show the magnitude of the budget, our budget for 2008-9, which was adopted last year in June of 2007, actually shows $193 million in budget, and you can see how the general fund at that point in time, with capital projects in it, was about 43% of the entire city. So summary of the financial strategic plan update for 2009, we used as a base the 2007-8 audited results. We used our most recent assumptions, which actually have changed even, which we'll get into that in a minute, even in the last week. Each revenue line item was analyzed individually. Expenditure assumptions were also reviewed in pretty much very finite detail. As you can see from this slide, the general fund 10-year projection requires extensive analysis and will probably be revised once more in January before the final is published. And this, just for your information, the strategic plan as it's laid out is found on exhibits F and G of the staff report. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to John.
Good evening, City Council. Tonight, the first section I will be covering is the 07-08 preliminary audited results. This was for the fiscal year that just ended in June 30th of 2008, so just a little over 3 months ago. Jumping right in, I am going to cover general fund revenues. I think that's at least our major focus is in projecting revenues and the change in the economy is to see how we ended up based on our projections back in July. This table shows the preliminary audited results for the general fund in the middle column, which is the actuals. This is compared to the revised budget of $73.3 million. The variance was a negative $1.1 million. As you can tell, sales or taxes had the largest decrease from our projections of $2.2 million. A majority of this was sales tax. The benefit was our interest earnings were up over $1 million and offsetted most of that decrease. I want to briefly note, back in February of 2008, our revenue projections had provided that we would be short about $945,000. So even from February to final results, we weren't that far off based on a over the 6 month period. Just some highlights for 07-08 revenue variances. Sales tax, as mentioned, had the largest decrease from $29 million down to $26.9, which is a $2.1 million decrease. In the permits, license and permits, building and safety had a budget of $3.9 million. The actuals for that fiscal year was $3 million. That's a decrease of $0.9 million. Interest earnings, as I mentioned, had an increase of over $1 million. To be exact, it was $1.3 million. And the vehicle license fee actually had a small increase from 9.7 up to $10 million. I talked a little about revenues. Overall, again, down $1 million from our original $1.1 million from our original projections. In talking about expenditures, this table shows general fund expenditures for the same period. The revised budget was $98 million, which included carryovers from 06-07 of $11.4 million. Actuals, though, were only $70.8 million, which is a 27.4 variance. This variance, as you can tell, is mainly in capital improvements and M&O, and I'll talk a little about both of those. For salaries, we were under budget by $1.2 million. When we made our original projections in February, we identified that sales tax would be down and that we froze vacant positions starting the first of the year. So this is a direct result of those vacant positions that were frozen the first of the year. M&O, we had a variance, we were under budget, $13.1 million. But this includes 8.8 in carryovers, and I want to highlight one specific carryover because when we talk about grants and other one-time money that we use, we include an M&O because it's not a capital project, but it is a grant. And so one of the large carryovers of that 8.8 is the $5 million grant that is budgeted to CRPD for Lang Ranch. CIP, again, we had a $11.5 million variance. $11 million of that will be carried over. Only about $500,000 will be unspent based on projects that were completed during that fiscal year. And then the last category, transfers out. We're always very conservative in budgeting our transfers out. Certain funds always come in under budget, and we had over budgeted transfers out by $2 million. Here are a few... Based on these preliminary results, general fund balance increase from 2007. The increase was approximately $3.5 million. This is a quick breakout of the history of fund balance, as you can tell in 2005, and that is highlighted in the staff report as well. We went from $73.3 million up to $84.5 million, which is a $11.2 million increase. As the city manager might have noted earlier, the city of Thousand Oaks is blessed to have very sufficient and healthy rainy day funds. Briefly, I wanted to highlight the other governmental funds. Here I'm highlighting the major funds that Candace mentioned earlier, the library, the gas tax, capital improvements, and lighting and landscaping. These are the results from 07-08. As anticipated, most of them came in over. The library fund, which was under, is based on encumbrances that are carrying forward. This slide covers business type funds. These are our enterprise funds. As you can tell, all of the enterprise funds, all 6, had positive changes in net assets. I do want to highlight the theaters fund. This was part of City Council priorities for 07-08, and that the theaters fund would be self-supporting this year with a net increase of over $300,000 in that fund. So we did accomplish the goal of no general fund subsidy for 07-08. Just to recap 07-08, positive results for the general fund. Reoccurring revenues did exceed reoccurring expenditures. Our fund balance did increase by $3.5 million. Major governmental funds overall had positive results. Major business type funds all had positive results, and just to note, the theaters fund. Next section I'm going to briefly cover is the fiscal year 08-09 revised budget, which includes revenue projections that we did in July and the gap closing strategy that we took in July as well, and then our most recent projections. I think I covered that. For revenues, this is based, the first column is our June 2007 projections. As you can tell, total general fund revenue was projected to be $75.1 million. A lot of things had changed based on the revised budget that we brought to council in July of 2008. We revised the general fund budget of $4 million down to $71.1 million. Some of the major changes, sales tax was one. We had a $2.4 million decrease in our projection, $350,000 in property transfer tax. For license and permits, we had a reduction of building permits of $1.2 million. For interest income, we projected $650,000 more, and for charges for services, we had a $500,000 projection or decrease. This is just to highlight and remind council of the reductions that we made in 08-09 to balance the budget going forward in July of 2008. We reduced appropriations $4 million. This summary is also provided in Exhibit D, and the highlights are we froze 11 positions. We had a rate reduction in workers' comp. Our projected police contract savings based on the prior year's actuals, we had a $500,000 decrease there. And then we also reduced travel and training budgets 50%. Now I'm going to, after covering the reductions in our revenue projections for July and the reductions that we made in July for expenditures or appropriations, I'm going to cover briefly our new projections and some of the trend information for our major revenue sources. I'm going to cover sales tax, property tax, transit occupancy tax, building permits and plan check revenues, interest earnings, and motor vehicle and lieu fee. The first column, which is our revised budget that was adopted July 2008 of $71 million that I just covered. The second column is our projections now in October of 2008, and then the variance. Our variance with over the last quarter is 1.1 or $1.2 million. A large portion of that is in sales tax. This slide shows the 5 major categories in our taxes. Sales tax is the first one. I'm going to show you actuals at $26.9 million. Our budget that we brought to you in July was $27.3 million. The projection now, as we speak, is $26 million. That's a decrease of $1.3 million. At this point, we do not have a change in our property tax projections. We're still analyzing data, and we probably will have a revised number at the next meeting based on December numbers. TOT, we actually actuals for last fiscal year were $2.9 million. We have a budget of $3 million, and we are not changing our projections yet. Franchise fees has a reduction of $1.1 million based on actuals. And property transfer tax we had reduced substantially and have no change in our current projection. Briefly, this is 10 years of sales tax. Actually, it's 13. 1 year's projections. In 08-09, you see that our budget is $27 million, and we're projecting $26 million. This takes us back to levels that are similar to 2005, which our budget and actuals were, or our budget was $26 million and actuals were $25.9 million. Property tax. In last July 2007, we projected 5% in both fiscal years. Fiscal year 07-08 had an increase of 6.8%, and in this fiscal year we're having an increase of 4.1%. So that's why there's no change in our property tax projections. This slide shows the assessed valuation for the city of Thousand Oaks. For 2009, our assessed valuation was $23.4 billion. This represents 22% of the valuation for Ventura County. This was also a change of $929 million from the prior fiscal year. That's close to $1 billion in changed assessed valuation. This slide shows where that change in assessed valuation is made up. As you can tell, the bond is the $928 billion, or million dollars. The first component is CPI. As you know, Prop 13 only allows a 2% CPI on assessed valuation in establishing the tax. So that had a dollar change of $428 million. There's also non-residential new construction of $137 million that came on the rolls for the fiscal year. Also, there's transfer of ownerships from 2007, which was $403 million. Unsecured change, this is property owned by businesses. There was an increase of $42 million. Prop 8 appeals, this is the first time we've seen a substantial amount in Prop 8 appeals. That is the reduction in property taxes based on changes in medium home sales. This was done county-wide by the assessor, the county assessor, and that reduction was $474 million. Even with the reduction based on the current Prop 8 appeals, we still had a positive growth of 4.1%. And then progress appraisals are new construction that haven't been completed but are appraised on an annual basis. And so this represents the $929 million in increased assessed valuation. The next slide is a chart showing property tax, transfer tax. As you can see, in 2006, 2007, we had substantial growth there. It's substantially decreased based on the medium home sales prices decreasing and the amount of units that are being transferred. Just to show this, single-family medium home sale prices have peaked in 2006 and have declined over the last 2 years. That's one element in calculating the property transfer tax. The other element is sales of single-family units within the city. As you can tell, since 2005, we declined every year in sales of single-family units, thus the decrease in property transfer tax. The next one I'm going to briefly cover is TOT. Thousand Oaks has 10 hotels, competitive trade area, competing with other local cities for TOT. In our projections, we will forecast in new hotels. There is a Hampton Inn scheduled for spring or in 2010, 2011. Doing the analysis, we simply look at occupancy rates, average room rates, and available rooms to calculate what our TOT will be. This chart shows history of the TOT since 2000. We are still projecting $3 million, which is just $100,000 more than last year. We monitor TOT on a monthly basis. That's when we receive TOT. We compare it to prior years, the same month in the prior year, to see if we see changes. At this point, we don't see any significant decreases, so we feel comfortable with the current $3 million projection. The next area I want to talk about is building and safety, or permits, and charges for permits. Here is the trend lines for building permits that have been processed. As you can see, as we all know, permits and building activity has decreased and it continues to decrease. Corresponding with that are revenues. Building permit and plan check revenues have decreased as well. I talked about approximately 25% decrease in building permit revenue last year. We're anticipating a little bit higher this year. Interest income. I think we covered this with the investment update. Interest income peaked in 2008 for the general fund. We have some of our highest cash balances, and we were earning over 4% in 2008. MVIL, or motor vehicle in lieu fee, this is the history. Right now we're projecting over $10 million. With the change or the permanent reduction of the vehicle licensing fee from the state, in which the governor signed when he first was elected, VLF is now growing with assessed valuation or property tax. Prior it was based on population and vehicles. So this revenue is a little easier to project. If we can project property taxes, we can definitely project this, this revenue source, because it grows with assessed valuation. Quickly, for fiscal year 08-09, this is the financial summary. We balanced the budget July 2008. We're closely monitoring our revenue sources. As you can tell, we're looking at it monthly. We'll give you an update at the next quarter. Revenue projections are changing. Sales tax, development-related revenue are changing, and so we're monitoring those closely. I didn't really talk about, but we projecting a $1.3 million decrease based on our projections based in July compared to now in October. We recently received news from the Ventura County related to our police charges and at least the contract increases. The good news is that we budgeted 5%. From what we're hearing from the county, the aggregate increase is 1%. If that does affect our contracts rates, we have over budgeted by 4%. Every percent is $250,000, and thus we would have starting $1 million savings in police rates or police costs this year, and that would easily offset the projected decrease in sales tax. And that concludes Section 2, and I'll turn over to Candace for the final section.
Okay, as I mentioned earlier, the Financial Strategic Plan 10-year projections can be found on Exhibit F. And I'll go over the main assumptions that we made in developing the model. Also on Exhibit E, we share some of the assumptions that we have with the general fund revenue and expenditures citywide. Major revenue assumptions, we assumed property tax increase of 2% going forward because that's the minimum that the assessor can increase, or the maximum assessor can increase property valuations in a year. We found out yesterday that there's a good chance that might be too high, but we're going to be reassessing that again in January. The sales tax, we think that after the dip back down to $26 million that we have right now, that we could expect approximately 1% increase going forward starting in 2010, 9-10. The rest of the increases or revenue sources that we show here are pretty much stable, and we don't expect much change except for maybe the property tax, transfer tax, which we just pointed out, since we have such a decline in sales at this point, that 2% is probably a little high as well. In terms of major revenue assumptions, additional ones that we looked at were business licenses and permits, as John mentioned, that we don't see much increase going forward. Maybe out in a couple of years we may go back to a 2% increase in business licenses, but with the economy at this point, it's safe to say that we don't expect an increase there. And the rest of them are pretty much at CPI increases, allowing for inflation. Due to the stock market decline, we really are expecting the PERS rates to go up. And one of the things that we've estimated here is that our fringe benefits are going to go up 3%, because that's pretty much what we see our salaries going up, so they kind of go in lockstep. But in 2009-10 and 10-11, there won't be much of a change in the PERS rates at this point, because any reductions that we're seeing in the stock market isn't folded into the PERS rates until 2011 and 12. So it's safe to say that that's probably a good increase for this point in time. And at that point, because the changes in the evaluations of the PERS portfolio is actually averaged over a 15-year period, it probably isn't going to be as big of an impact over time, because they average it over a longer period of time now than they did in the past. So if you take a look at this excerpt from the schedules I was telling you about, it kind of summarizes the next 5 years, and including this current fiscal year that we're in. And you can see, looking at the bottom, that the net change in fund balance shows $11.7 million figure, but that includes our capital improvements, which we have budgeting for out of fund balance. So we're expecting around a $2.7 million difference. But going forward, it goes up from $5 million on up. And that's the nut that we're really going to have to put our arms around and really have to take back to council in January with more firm numbers and a plan for how we're going to adjust our expenditures and our revenue to help make this gap go away. We're already addressing this gap, as John mentioned, by eliminating positions if we become vacant and we are selective in that area. We've we're recommending tonight that we delay some capital projects, so that would increase investment earnings for this fiscal year. We're also implementing fleet audit recommendations,
So we are being proactive internally now, but we're also going to be looking forward to making major changes. One of them is that we are looking at I skipped a slide. One of the major challenges to our assumptions then is a state budget deficit that we are seeing even in today's paper that they're looking at more of a deficit than the initially we're looking at when they adopted the budget last month. The economy, again, we're looking at property values and sales tax revenues and development-related revenues. I mentioned the Calpers performance and how that's going to affect us. And then again, the law enforcement costs are often variable because we can't anticipate how much of an increase they're going to give to the deputies. We also can't anticipate how much workers' comp costs will be and how much their retirement plan increases will be. Okay. One of the things we're doing independent of all this is we're working with the Park District and the School District and the city. We've met several times now with major decision makers in each agency, trying to go through what we can do cooperatively to help all three of us. And one of the things that we've agreed to do is issue an RFP that the city of Thousand Oaks will be actually spearheading, but it's going to be actually looking at a survey of the citizens in Thousand Oaks to see what interest they have in and what the populace would be able to handle in terms of changes in taxes. We found that that the Park District has major needs for capital improvements, and that the School District has technology needs. And the City of Thousand Oaks, obviously, you've seen in our presentation tonight, there's some major gaps in our funding. So it makes sense to just take a look at what the citizenry is able to handle in terms of what kind of things are important to them and what kind of things they would like to see the city do as well, and the School District and the Park District. We looked at cooperative purchasing opportunities. There's all three of us are doing similar things in terms of purchasing, and so we looked at different areas that might be something that we could work on. One of them was looking at the Municipal Service Center as we expand there, whether or not there's opportunities to share there. We also looked at working together on gassing up the fleet because we have a number of different kinds of fuel out there, and so the other agencies use that as well. So there was a discussion about sharing that facility. We also know that there's a number of things that we do similarly, like buying office supplies and computers and tree trimming and that kind of thing, so we can see some opportunities for cost savings and working together there as well. By the way, that RP that we're working on will probably be coming out no later than January, but we have a little bit of time to be actually working on this. The earliest that we can do any kind of a referendum on the ballot would be in 2010, November 2010. So we have some time if the council and if the school district and the Park District decide to go forward. So in conclusion, I've got some main points I wanted to make. Thousand Oaks is in better financial condition than most cities and counties and finished 2008 on a positive note. We have healthy reserves to weather upcoming economic impacts. We continue to monitor our fiscal situation as we move into the next budget cycle. We continue our proactive approach with the use of our financial strategic plan. And we continue to refine our gap-closing strategies in preparation for the tougher decisions that will be made in the next two-year budget cycle. Our next steps that we'll be bringing back to Council in December, the budget calendar, and we will be performing a mid-year analysis through December 31st and present that with the financial strategic plan to Council in January of 2009. I want to thank the staff from the Finance Department who are here tonight that were very instrumental in pulling this all together. It was a yeoman's effort. We have Brent Sakata here, who's our budget officer, and in the audience I see Kat Haywood, our accounting manager, Jamie Miller, who's our accountant, and Faye Menken, a senior accountant. They're all instrumental in working with us on this, pulling this staff report together. With that, there's two recommendations for the council tonight. One is to receive our department report on the 10-year financial strategic plan, and then we also have a recommendation to approve the Ad hoc Capital Facilities Committee recommendation to postpone selected capital projects for fiscal year 2008-9, specifically the turnaround, the parking garage, and the teen center. With that, we're available for any questions.
Councilmember Bill de la Pena.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you very much for this excellent presentation, and the charts do help, as do the tables. I would like to go back to slide number 48, and the line that says net change in the fund balance. You did say we see $11.7 million in 08-09, $10 million 09 and 10, and it goes higher and higher. It increases until the year 2013. But I'd like to confirm the number that you mentioned. You said the difference was $2.7 million for the 08-09 year, and perhaps going up to $5 million the following fiscal budget?
Correct. I was eliminating capital outlay, capital projects when I gave that number. The number that we show on the slide here has capital projects in there, capital outlay. And it's important to note that even with that removed, that our operating deficit is pretty significant. And even if we balance the budget, we still not adding more money to our fund balance, so we can do capital projects going forward. So that is a major concern that we have. We have a number of street overlays and things that are starting to be needed to be done in the general fund, and those reserves, while we have them now, 5 or 10 years from now, they probably won't be there if we continue at that pace.
Given the uncertainty for the next 5 years, perhaps more, who knows, was there a recommendation to delay all capital improvement projects, not just a select few? All the projects, capital improvement, that are not, say, emergency repair or structural improvements?
Well, the ones we identified are primarily in the general fund. The remainder in the general fund, I don't know if we have the capital budget book here, but there's a number of them that are more maintenance and operations. I mean, maintenance, that means we have to do them. I mean, they're street related, they're keeping the streets in good condition, and those kind of things can't be delayed. So that's the main reason why we presented the three that we feel need more review. We need to look at the long-term maintenance costs of those, especially like the teen center, figure out how that's going to fit into our budget going forward. So we felt like those three needed more discussion and review by the council, whether or not that was still a priority of theirs, and how that fit into our long-term operating budget as well. Those had a big effect on the operating budget going forward.
You've already cut $4 million so far in terms of operating expenses, and you've made significant changes. For example, the community, the theaters department, 11%. Do you foresee that, can you foresee cutting another 5% for the next fiscal year from operating expenses? I mean, that is a lot. That would total pretty much 10% over
it's significant, and one of the things that we're doing proactively now is we have a selective hiring freeze. We are looking at positions as people retire and leave service to determine how it could be done more efficiently or with another person, or not done, not eliminated entirely. So there are a lot of decisions like that have remained ongoing now. And then we are coming up with a list of gap closing strategies. A number of them we already implemented in that $4 million number that you were referred to, but we have more that we want to bring to council to discuss in January.
The things that come to mind perhaps would be some training is mandatory, obviously. You've already cut back on some of the training costs. Perhaps we could cut back on travel as well, not only for employees, staff, but perhaps council as well. But I do see that you already cut over 7% from the council budget, too. I'm just wondering, did we take into consideration the $5 million for Lang Ranch and the Discovery Center as well? Was that something that the ad hoc committee was not willing to discuss or leave that alone?
The Discovery Center was out of redevelopment agency money, not out of the general fund, and the Lang Ranch Park is out of the general fund, but we left that in there at this point.
I think the city has approximately 40 parks, perhaps, and I know that it is a priority goal for the park district to construct Lang Ranch, but given the somewhat negative outlook, I wonder whether that is not something that should be put on hold as well. That is something I would like to throw out there. The other thing is the Calpers again. You anticipate about a 3% increase. Calpers has lost approximately 20% of its investment. How much does that translate into actual city dollars that would have to be made up over the next few years?
The Calpers does their calculation every year, 2 years in arrears. So what we're experiencing now, we won't see, actually it's 3 years in arrears. We're not going to see that until after this next year budget. We won't see the impact necessarily. And as I mentioned before, they smooth that loss along with all the gains they've had, because we actually have a slide, I think, is it up there? PERS has seen increases in the past couple of years after early 2000, had seen some increases, and that's being averaged over the time along with the losses. So we have to wait and see how the whole fiscal year ends, because they do it on a fiscal year basis. But what I'm trying to say is that over a 15-year period, when you average those losses over that long of a period of time, the impact is PERS is intentionally trying to make that less of an impact to the city. If you remember back in 2004-05, we had this big increase all of a sudden, about 5%, and then now it's up to 12%, and it had to do with the fact that we had those losses in early 2000, and they smoothed those over a 3-year period at that point, and so we had these big spike in increases. They were sensitive to the employer, to all the cities' plight with this, having it go up so quickly and so steeply, that they are changing the way they do that.
The money that was supposed to be raised from, I believe, the golf course to be transferred to the open space fund, the council recently voted to delay that, or actually not to put the money into the open space fund. Where is that money actually going to, if it's not going to the open space fund?
It's an operating transfer that was going to the open space fund from the general fund. The transfer just didn't occur, so the money stayed in the general fund and didn't get transferred out.
What was it used for then?
For this fiscal year.
John reminded me that it was 08-09 fiscal year that we're talking about, this current year that we're in, so we just haven't made the transfer this fiscal year.
Yeah, for 07-08, the transfer was made, the $100,000.
Okay, that was approximately $100,000. None of this, of course, affects the redevelopment money. That is different because we have to wait until we hear from the state, although I think the impact to our redevelopment money was approximately 1.5 million, is it?
The current projections from the state controller is $1.3 million, and that's ERAF shift for this year.
Okay. And then you also mentioned the survey. Is the survey already underway to survey residents to see whether they would propose support some sort of parcel tax or whatever proposal there may be?
We haven't done that at all. What happens is we have to go do an RFP for a consultant to pick one that can help us with this survey, and then they are going to be making suggestions. We'll be making suggestions on the survey. Actually, and also the attitude survey is coming out in will be coming out in the spring too. So we've got a number of surveys that we'll be able to work with to determine how to approach it going forward. But all we're going to do initially is a survey and then decide what to do after that.
We have a proposal coming up before the council next month to send out an RFP to receive bids to start a branding campaign for the city of Thousand Oaks. What is the money for that? What is the anticipated cost for that?
I'm not aware of the anticipated cost yet. I have not seen a final project, but the money, it's twofold. There's money from 07-08 that's being carried forward, and I believe that represents probably over half of the money, and then there's money identified in this year's budget for the branding project. So there will be no request for any new funding.
Well, given that there are several $1 million we have to make up, should we not take the time now to start identifying projects that already have been, of course, allocated funds to transfer them to the following year?
This is a one-time project that has already been identified and budgeted for, which has benefits, I think, that people that participate in the project would think are 20 to 25 years. So one-time money for a project of this magnitude, to postpone it, it's not an ongoing cost. It's already been budgeted and it's a one-time project.
Yeah, I'm just wondering because we are receiving requests from various community groups requesting help because their fundraising is down, and I wonder whether we do need a branding campaign for the city of Thousand Oaks, whether we truly need to spend money on that, whether that is a real priority. Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Councilmember Glancy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Candy, another very thorough report. Thank you very much to you and your staff. I have a question. In the front part of the recommendation, you identify 3 projects, capital projects, that will be revisited next year. And when you revisit them, what standards do you use to decide which ones to bring into the current time period?
We are going to bring something back to you in January as part of our gap closing strategy that will be included. What we wanted to do was have more time to talk about the long-term impacts of those 3 so that we can make a good recommendation to the council. I mean, I guess what you're looking at in terms of criteria is the teen centers, what is it to heat and air condition? What's that big, what's that going to cost us, and can we manage that given our gap? The same with the turnaround and the parking garage. What's the maintenance that's required if we paint it? Those are the kind of questions that we need to spend more time in analyzing and want to bring back to the council in January, and then the council can make a decision at that time.
Okay, thank you. I'll tell you where my interest is particularly is in the grant money that we got for the Norwegian grade. I think that's a project that really needs to progress as quickly as we can get it, because it is a clear safety hazard. And would that be affected? Would that be something that you would put on hold for a while to reevaluate, or is that just going to march on?
No, that would continue. We're just recommending some capital projects that could have a long-term budget impact. Anything related to streets and roads maintenance, we're asking to continue.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Fox?
Thanks. Candy, just a couple of clarification questions I'm not sure on. On slide 15, you commented that the building safety budget was about $1 million short, okay, in terms of budgeted and an actual. Is that due to just the overall decline in building? Are those public works? Because in another part of the report that talks about public works fees, so I'm unsure. Where do you guys see the deficit there? Is that just less permits? What's going on there?
When I talked about the reduction of $0.9 million, that was simply in building and safety permits. Okay. So Public Works also does permits. We anticipate some decrease, but it's very, very minor.
So what does that mean? Does that mean less buildings going on, less home improvements going on? In terms of actually what's going on in the community, what could we take away from that?
Less permits with less assessed valuation increases.
Okay.
So overall, yeah, less building, less permits.
All right. And then from a historical perspective, page 19, in past years, I can recall that the city used to subsidize the library fund. I think there was a time when the library fund was actually $4 million that I can remember, and we put in a pretty good subsidy of that. And I don't know if I'm reading it right, but it looks like revenues and expenditures are about the same. What does that mean?
Well, we try to really provide a very brief summary for the other funds. That revenue also includes the transfer in from the general fund.
Okay, all right.
So I hope that...
So we're still subsidizing the library to the tune of like $4 million, $5 million probably?
Yeah. Actually, it looks like For fiscal year ending of '08, $2.7 million.
All right, okay.
Councilmember Gillette?
I don't know if I'm done yet. I got my things tabbed here.
I thought, all right, at the end.
And then just I think on page 31, we're 22% of the total county property tax valuation, almost a quarter, is here in Thousand Oaks.
Yes, I think for the Ventura County for 08-09 it was $107 billion, and we represent $23.4 billion. So.
Who's the next closest?
What's that?
Who's in terms of other cities? How do we rank?
I have the slide. That data we actually brought, amazing. Give me a second. I have that. For the next closest city is Oxnard. You have the.
What do they represent?
Oxnard is 16 billion.
So we're the biggest by a long way.
Actually, let me update that. $16.3 billion. Yeah, so we're what's that? 7.2 billion more than Oxnard is. With
All right. I'm just curious, Mr. Bisting. You know what their city manager makes? That's a joke. It's a joke.
I happen to know that.
Yeah.
Sales tax numbers would be even more striking.
Right. You know, as far as, we had a 4.1% increase in assessed valuation. Oxnard only had a 1.3% increase in assessed valuation from prior year. And I think the only city that beat us, well, there's actually two, was Fillmore at 5.7% and Ojai, which was 4.2% increase in assessed valuation.
Okay. And then going back to the recommendations for the capital improvement projects, we're going to basically leave that money for, I thought you said for investment purposes, so we make more on the investment, take that money and rather than use it for capital projects, keep it invested. What are we making?
3.8.
Yeah, it's 3.8. Remember, we were talking about this last council meeting, that our rate going forward is...
busy at a brush fire.
Oh, that's right, you weren't here.
Yeah.
But it was, it is declining, but keeping the cash balance higher does help us in the long run. Again, right now we're in most of these projects, we're still in the design stage. We haven't really moved forward on any building part of it, so it just delays it a little longer.
I just would point out to the council, and I'm certainly going to support the committee's recommendation because I know they took a long, hard look at those recommendations, but the painting of the parking structure, while I think you raise a good issue, what are the maintenance, and I think we do need to take a hard look at what we're spending money on over the next 2 or 3 years, obviously, but that's an issue that has come up time and time again at the council. And I'm questioning if we move forward, and I think that we will. We probably need to communicate some of these capital projects that folks have expected for a number of years. I know I've answered a number of emails, when you're painting the parking structure, that, I think we're showing good fiscal restraint and responsibility by not moving forward with those. On the other side, there's a lot of folks in the community who are going to wonder why we're not doing things that we said we would do. And the answer is because circumstances have changed, and we need to be responsible and step up and make those decisions. So I'm going to support that, but I think I'd like staff to think about how we may want to communicate some of these more high-profile capital projects out to the community on here's what our plan was, but we're not going to be able to do that right away, and here's why. So that would just be my comment on that. And I'm going to echo the rest of the council. You guys did a great job in providing this report, and to congratulate Mr. Mitnick for what really is your strong suit in terms of real sound financial management and oversight of the city. Thanks.
Councilmember Gillette.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One thing in response to the parking structure as an example, in the Facilities Committee, when we do the analysis on the in-depth discussion on that, there are things that we never have a chance to talk about in the bigger context. As an example, there is so much raw concrete exposed to the elements that perhaps, well, not perhaps, we know that sealing and painting might well preserve that facility for a longer time. So there are unintended consequences of delays. And that's why we rely on our engineers and our experts to give us that information as Mayor Irwin and I sit and discuss that and represent the council. When we look at each one of these capital projects, what are the long-term consequences of delaying? The community expectation is that we, because of this financial situation that the state and the nation find itself, we haven't closed our doors. We didn't go out of business. We still have a revenue stream, while it may not be as significant as it was, and trying to balance that. But we meet on a regular basis. We don't deal with this in a vacuum. We look at it on a regular basis, and then we try and bring the information forward for the entire council to share it. So there is a process, and I think it's working quite well to safeguard the assets that the community has, but also do it in the most fiscally sound method possible. With that in mind, I wanted to ask Mrs. Hong, on the revenue variance, as we look at declines in projected revenues in building and safety, public works, the regulatory agencies, the review components, one of the most expensive components of any operation we do is the human costs, the personnel costs. If we're declining in activity in all of these departments across, how are we correspondingly reducing the human costs that we have invested in these to handle a certain workload as that workload declines? Is that clear? Okay, thank you.
We are watching for retirements. We have, I know one inspector is going to be doing redevelopment agency inspections on low-income housing. So I think there's opportunities to not only not fill positions as they become vacant, but then also find other duties that they may be able to accomplish. You're right, the staffing levels are similar to what we had 5 years ago when we were at our peak of development. So we do have to be looking at that closely, and it's one of the things that I know the city manager and I have talked about a number of times. So we do have plans.
Okay, I just want to make sure that gets out in the discussion area, because if workloads, especially with the housing slump, continue, that particular situation will only become more significant. And we do have, because of the age of the city, I know we have retirements regularly, especially now with people that have been here for a long time and they're approaching the retirement age. But we all need to be aware that you folks, all of our senior management, are watching those things to make those appropriate adjustments as workloads decline, that where possible, the human cost, the human element, and that information also, I believe it's extremely important, regularly communicated to the employee workforce. So we have such a committed workforce, and that they know they need to be constantly made aware of what our situation is and what adjustments are necessary and what's going on. Not to instill any kind of fear or concern, but that sound, focused management is ongoing, looking at all of the variables that affect our revenue and expenditure streams. Thank you.
We have a speaker card, Mr. Kidway.
Nick Kidway, resident of Newbury Park, Director, Concerned City of Thousand Oaks, Honorable Mayor, City Council. First of all, I would say that I would appreciate if Mr. Fox would revisit the issue of the timing, that important hearings like this, which are not public hearings, citizens should be given 5 minutes if you really want to hear from people. I know you don't want to hear from me, but there might be some other people that you might like to hear from. I do appreciate what staff has done, and I appreciate getting the handout. I watched the last meeting, and I was going to call Ms. Hong and get the PowerPoint because I really liked it. I just went in my garage and picked up the budget summary for 97, 98, and one of the changes is, there was no color. Things have changed a little bit. I guess this is the first one picture with the blob from 95. And of course, there was no color inside, but the staff was not completely accurate. As a former member of the budget task force, no, I have it and I appreciate it, is that the budget, I'll take it from one of my members. The budget task force that I was with, which we were laid off, before the economic collapse, we were paid so much, is that we discussed the financial strategic plan, and we actually had a presentation, I don't know if the same folks, but they came down from Sacramento, and there were a few people in the task force that were very, very familiar with it. I made these notes, but 3 minutes is not enough. The problem is that as an observer, most people can see that you're really not tightening your belt and there's too much waste. Perhaps if my friend Sarah does not make it to the White House, maybe you can invite her to come here and chop some of these things. There's one example, I showed you these old buildings, these old books, but you still have the agenda packet going to the sheriff department, going to the Chamber of Commerce. It's disgusting that the Chamber of their own accord doesn't say that we don't need it. It is supposed to be for the public, but it's not really available to the public. I know it because I haven't asked in a while, but it's not kept outside. There's just printing that is going to waste. And then we need sacrifice from the top. And it's very sad that we haven't seen that coming, and it puts a very bad, it's demoralizing for the people. There should really be a lot more cutbacks. This thing about the building permits and all that, you really haven't cut enough people, and that's what needs to be done. That's what government is not able to do. You're wasting our taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kidway. Mr. Mitnick, did you have some comments?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, just to touch on, elaborate a little bit on some of the discussion we had here tonight. I hope you found it to be useful. I do want to acknowledge and thank Candy Hong and John Adams, Brent, and their staff that are here. They do an outstanding job, and they put in a great deal of effort to get here tonight, and with the previous 8 or 9 other meetings that we've had. So well done. The proof is in the pudding, so to speak. Comments were made about the property tax assessed valuation, percent of the total county, and how we're #1 in the county that way. On the sales tax side, that's equally true. I think the numbers are even a little bit higher. I think we're over a quarter of the total of the county. That is proof that we are the economic engine of the county, and the value of having a diverse and strong and healthy local economy. And it illustrates how this local economy will weather and withstand the challenges in front of it, because there's a strong foundation for the future. And if you drive around Thousand Oaks, you see the investment that these private companies are making in their enterprises, whether on one end of town it's the Westlake Promenade, the millions being pumped into that, new restaurant open and so on, through Thousand Oaks Boulevard, all the way to the Oaks Mall, and the hundreds of millions of dollars being put into that with the opening of Nordstrom Movie Co. And they're signing leases out there in the new stores, even though we're in a tight economy. So, and then those are just some of the retail examples in the auto mall with the BMW, the $45 million project that's under construction. So there's a lot of investment still taking place. I'd like to encourage and caution the council to be careful about as Councilmember Gillette, one of the committee members on the Capital Facilities Committee, was talking about, and Councilmember Fox also made comments to the effect, we need to be careful on the capital improvement side. We are being prudent, and we are recommending that we slow down a little bit on some of the projects, not eliminate or cut, but just slow down. We'll bring it back in a few months and see if we can get it into the next fiscal year, because there is a significant amount of money that has been set aside, appropriated for these projects, and the council, you do have a financial or fiduciary obligation to the community to invest and reinvest in the infrastructure in the community. We can't just let things stagnate, because if we hold off too long, then it'll end up costing us more in the long haul, and then you'll be beating up on me and staff even more so. Also, with the Civic Arts Plaza, and there was some talk about the parking structure, the painting of it, and the solar panels and stuff up on top. This is not just a city hall that houses faceless bureaucrats and for the comforts of the bureaucrats. This is a business enterprise here, the theaters, with tens of thousands of people coming through every year, the pressure on Tom Mitzi and his crew to maintain in the black. So we have to, I made reference to Macerich and the Oaks Mall and the Promenade, we have to view ourselves that way in terms of how we run this place. It's a business enterprise. We have to make it attractive and welcoming to the people who pay $20, $40, $60, often sometimes even up to $100 a ticket. The Board of Governors and the Alliance for the Arts has, over the years, pounded the city saying you're not investing enough in your theaters. When the seats were deteriorating and the springs were popping out and the carpet was worn down, the council and the city was, there were a lot of complaints coming your way saying you need to invest in your theater. So they are a business, this is a business enterprise, and the parking structure also accommodates people who are patrons. So please keep that in mind. I know you know that. I just wanted to take a few minutes to say that. And on the communication with the workforce, council, you'll see the copies that I share with you. We go out of our way from the very top, from my position, through the department heads, to the division heads, section heads, and how we communicate with the employees directly through emails, letters in with their paychecks, meetings. We go out and we talk to them. We solicit the input from the employees, because as we go through the budget cuts and we cut positions and we trim budgets, we need their creativity and innovation to come up with cost-saving measures. And I have to tell you, the ideas that they put forward are incredible. Incredible. We've been in front of you with respect to what goes on with the wastewater treatment plant, because they've been in the limelight lately, but also in John's shop in community development, Mark's, who just walked in Public Works, and all the other departments. They do a great job. So they actually get excited during times like this because they know we're committed to them and we listen to them, so we're receptive. So thank you for listening to my follow-up comments. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mitnick. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank the staff. I think it was a year and a half ago that we were talking about, first of all, considering what's happening at the state level and what's happening at the federal level, it is, we are doing amazingly well with the balanced budget. The cuts you've made have made sure that we stay balanced. We have healthy reserves compared to a lot of other cities, and I think that we are doing very well, and a lot of it is, the focus of the staff. But a year and a half ago, we already saw that there were going to be some challenges facing the city, and between Mr. Mitnick and the Finance Department, Ms. Hong and Mr. Adams, everybody else, to put together these 9 different sessions and talk about the challenges we're facing over the next 10 years. I think it's very important, and it showed a lot of foresight, and we're not going into it blindly, so I really, really appreciate everything that you've done to keep us kind of moving along the right path. Does anybody else have any comments? Motion? Councilmember Gillette?
The motion is staff recommendation to receive and file with recommendations, 1 and 2.
And comments? Ms. Bildo-Pena?
I would like to add to that as a friendly amendment to look at other capital improvement projects to close these multi-million-dollar gaps over the next few years, such as delaying the $5 million for Lang Ranch, which comes out of the general fund, and definitely look at other ways to tighten our belts first before we go out and ask people via a survey to see whether they are willing to pay more taxes to cover the cost. Those are just some of the capital improvement projects. There are many other ways, of course, to save money, and that would be one amendment, and one friendly amendment.
Councilmember Gillette?
I won't accept that as a friendly amendment, so if you want to take it through as a separate amendment, vote on it.
I'll take it as a separate then.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a concern because Lang Ranch Park, that money was not listed here as an agenda item, and I believe that if council wants to consider that, we really need to have it listed so that people themselves, that anyone interested in the community could respond to that. these were listed as a recommendation that's gone to the ad hoc committee and agendized properly, so I do have a concern about just picking one other capital improvement project out. If the council wants the, and I believe there might be, someone can correct me, but in January we're bringing back the whole budget process and what we're going to be looking at, that's a more appropriate time. So all I'm suggesting is I don't believe it's appropriate for the council to vote on one other capital improvement project that was not listed as an agenda item, not even the idea that other capital improvement projects would be considered tonight. I just have a concern that there's been no public notice that we'd be talking about postponing that project.
That sounds fair. Thank you very much for the clarification and explanation. I will support the motion, but as someone who is a fiscal conservative, I think that we need to do a lot more in order to cut the some of the expenditures. This is not going far enough, and I remember a year and a half ago speaking to staff and asking how can we take steps now in order to save some of the expenditures, and my requests or comments fell on deaf ears. So I'm glad that we're finally here taking this on, especially issues that I had been complaining about, these particular capital improvement projects. But I think that we should have done this sooner. This is kind of late in the game. I don't think there was a lot of foresight. I requested this be done a year and a half ago, and it didn't go anywhere. So I'm glad, however, that we are finally doing it, and I do think that there are many other ways where we can actually cut back, and this is at least a beginning, and I will support it with the caveat, though, that I'm looking forward to January, because we do need to cut back a whole lot more in order to make up these multi-million dollars in gaps. So I just want to go on the record. Thank you.
And I will say that over the last 2 years, we have had a balanced budget, and we have had growing reserves. They have increased by $31 million. So to say that your suggestions were not looked at, I don't think is really accurate. A year and a half ago, we did start to look at what the forecasts were saying, and we did start to make changes. The staff has been making changes and has made very significant cuts last year. Dr. Glancy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to comment that in my mind it's extremely fiscally irresponsible to not want to maintain a $150 million asset of the city. That's not being fiscally responsible to even consider it. It's not being conservative. It's being very silly. I think we do have a lot of areas where we can cut back on some expenses, and I think as we look at some of the expenses we've incurred over the last year, perhaps some of the study we've had to undergo to consider ill-thought-out propositions and proposals, if they're at a minimum, it'll save us some money also. So I'll gladly support this motion.
And City Manager Mitnick had some comments.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, just to clarify for the record in defense of staff and the report that's in front of you, we do not have multi-year deficits. We're not in a deficit. The reference is made to the long-term projection that finance staff has put forward to illustrate, well, worst-case type of scenario that if 100% of future year budgets are expended and conservative revenues come in, you fund all the capital projects from one-time reserves for which they're set aside, you do draw down on your balance. So it's really helpful, or it's a disservice to the community to provide deceptive information and to scare them into thinking we're running into deficits, which we're not. So to be supportive of staff here, this is a planning tool, a management tool. And so projects that are already appropriated, funds have been set aside, are for one-time projects. And to confuse that with future changes in fund balance for capital projects does a disservice to the community. So these capital projects have funds for them, and that's really it. So Candy and John, I just wanted to clarify that.
Councilmember Gillette, any final
Motion
comments?
stands.
Okay, vote please.
Motion carries 5-0.
Item 10, redevelopment agency reports, there are none. Item 11, committee, commission, and board reports. 11A, public art donations, and that's the Arts Commission. Stephanie Angelini, who is the Arts Commission Chair, will be speaking to us this evening.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, and staff, I am honored to chair the Arts Commission, and tonight I bring from the Arts Commission a recommendation that you accept 2 donations of public art. The Arts Commission's duties are to review, I'm shorter than the last person here, review works of art to be acquired or commissioned or permanently displayed on city property. The Arts Commission then takes these recommendations to City Council. We're an 11-member board appointed by you, and we meet monthly in an advisory capacity relative to cultural development of the city, both in the performing and the visual arts. So the 2 pieces are Stagecoach Inn, an oil on canvas painted by artist Bob Rickards, donated by the Stagecoach Museum Foundation, which I believe you saw earlier this evening, and Quest, a sculpture made of ultracal, which looks like plaster, but it is actually white stone, by artist Giselle Friedman. We met in public hearing on October 16th and reviewed the donations of both of these items. And we voted unanimously on both counts to accept these items. I know that you have information on both the artists and the pieces in your packet, and I will be happy to answer any questions. I will say that there will be no other expenses for these pieces. They do rotate through the city. We will find appropriate places for them, and we move them around on a rotating basis every year or 2, and we will not need any more funding for them to build the bases or anything like that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Angelini. Councilmember Gillette.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Just a question. As an example, the Stagecoach Inn painting by Mr. Rickards, there's a certain amount of information that goes with that work, as there is with each of them. How do we capsulize the piece of information that goes with it so that when it goes up somewhere, someone walking up to it to look at, appreciate, understands the significance of it? I'm thinking specifically, we just went through a clock dedication thing commemorating the 50th anniversary of the Thousand Oaks Rotary Club, and that's a clock at Thousand Oaks and Moore Park. Well, at the 25th anniversary, the Rotary Club bought a piece of art, commissioned an artist in Laguna Beach, and had that piece of art commissioned, and there was Mike Adams at Cal Lutheran, did a proclamation type thing that accompanied it for a period of time. That piece of art was designated for an expansion at the 401-403 Hillcrest site. There was even an alcove planned. Well, those plans changed, and that piece of art disappeared for a period of time. Several years later, it resurfaced. It's now downstairs in the outside of the Public Works counter. And a few years later, when Tom Hare was the facilities manager, he found the proclamation. And so now the two have rejoined each other. How do we safeguard so that the art doesn't stand by itself and lose its significance? How are we doing that? Are we taking account to make sure that a treasure like that, or this or other pieces, that people know what they're looking at?
We discussed that exact thing, particularly in conjunction with the piece for the Stagecoach Inn, because they have very generously donated the original. There are glisses of that work, which are digital images that look exactly like the original one. We're not actually sure they didn't actually swap out their real one, but no. They gave us the original, and it is very important that it say right there, this is the original piece, there's a copy of it at the Stagecoach Inn Museum, and there will be another copy somewhere else, but we will hold the original. So the short answer is it's very important that we do that, and the Arts Commission looks at that. How do we catalog all of these pieces and keep looking at them all the time? Currently, that is not something that the Arts Commission is doing, but it is definitely something that the Arts Commission or the Cultural Commission eventually should be doing on a continuous basis, because it's definitely an important thing to be watching where the pieces are and where the adjacent information is. But we did talk about it for these two pieces, and we intend to put a piece right next to it that says this is the original, and so that everyone knows. And when they sell glissés, those will say the original hangs at City Hall and with the City of Thousand Oaks, somewhere with the City of Thousand Oaks.
Well, I appreciate it that you guys are on top of it and watching it, because as the city moves now towards its 50th year, the accumulation of things like this, my sense is the collection is getting larger. We're not aware of it, but the job that you folks do is greatly appreciated, and greatly appreciated by the community. One of the major factors of quality of life in this community is our commitment to the arts, and also the visual arts and our statuary around the community. And it continues to be a very high priority with our residents, even in these tough economic times, that these things are valued, appreciated, recognized, maintained, and for everyone's appreciation. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I understand that there's about 120 pieces that the city currently owns, and that's a significant collection that we really truly do need to love and take care of. So thank you for that.
Any other comments? Dr. Glancy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd move staff recommendation points 1 and 2.
All right. Vote, please.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much, Ms. Angelini, for all the work that you do on behalf of the arts in our community.
Thank you very much, and thank you for supporting the arts. I'm proud of our city. Thank you.
City Manager, follow-up requests from the public, state budget cuts and potential impacts on the City of Thousand Oaks, and announcements and upcoming issues.
Okay, Madam Mayor, members of the council, no additional follow-up. State budget situation. I was hopeful we could stop doing this, but I guess I'll have to keep doing it. The governor did sign a budget on September 24th, and it included a lot of different sort of if-then type of scenarios, including a taking from of all the redevelopment agencies in the state of $350 million, and you heard earlier our share for this year is $1.3 million. The impact on the general fund is still uncertain at this point. The current budget that was adopted up there, as it was 85 days late, assumes that the voters in, I think, January of 2009 will approve a special type of revenue source. If that doesn't fail, then, or that doesn't pass and it fails, then the state will be facing a significant recurring budget deficit. Again, it sort of starts all over. The California Redevelopment Agencies Association has filed a law, or is in the process of filing a lawsuit against the governor and the state to try to get some of that redevelopment money back. So you'll hear more about that as time goes by. And it was revealed this week that the current budget shortfall may be actually much more significant than anticipated, sort of going right back where we were. I have all these details in front of me, which I won't go into, but to let you and the community know, we're watching and monitoring the situation. We are not out of the woods yet. And you can anticipate that by the time we come back to you with the final financial strategic plan in January of 2009, we'll have more information on the state budget. So we keep an eye on that. Okay, upcoming announcements, upcoming issues. Start with a fun one since Halloween is on Friday. So starting tomorrow night, we're at the CRPD, or 403 Hillcrest. There will be a haunted house, a reign of terror. This is a gentleman, he used to do this out of his garage in the Ling Ranch area, It's evolved into such a large activity now. Now it's over at the CRPD site, and the public is more than welcome to attend. It's a real cool thing. So take advantage of the leeway here and announce that. The next City Council meeting will be on November 18th. And there's one public hearing at this point, and that's water rate adjustments. The cost of water that the city purchases has gone up, and we have to pass that along, and by law we have to hold a public hearing to do that. We'll have an update report on the housing element and a few other items. And the next council meeting is on November 25th, and we have one public hearing dealing with cleaning up the municipal code in terms of water and wastewater language. No rate increases or anything, just some sort of cleanups. And that's it by way of city manager update. Oh, I got one other item. Sorry. There's this thing called an election next week, November 4th, and the city clerk wants me to remind you that voters can drop off your absentee ballots or mail-in ballots, previously referred to as absentee ballots. I guess now they're called mail-in ballots. You can drop those off prior to Election Day at the city clerk department here at City Hall. I did that this morning. It's very easy. You just walk in between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. They'll gladly take your ballot. You can save it on the postage stamp. And there's information on the city's website about finding your polling place for those of you who want to vote live and in person. Just go to the city's website and you'll find that information. Should you have any questions, call the city clerk's office at 449-2151 Election Central, and please remember to vote.
Okay, can we have the city attorney please announce the closed session?
Yes, this closed session actually involves the redevelopment agency. The city council is sitting as the redevelopment agency, and it is a conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54-956.9, subsection C. There's one case. Since it is the council's standard or practice to adjourn into the closed session, if the council authorizes initiation of a lawsuit, then the same will be reported in the public minutes of this meeting so that we won't come back out to report that. Thank you.
We are adjourning this evening in memory of two gentlemen. Our first adjournment this evening is in honor of Fred Woodard, husband of the city's Revenue Operations Supervisor, Nancy Woodard. Nancy and Fred were married for 17 years, and together they enjoyed raising Nancy's son, Chris Housel. Fred served in the Army for 3 years, and during that time he was stationed in Germany. He was retired from the plastics manufacturing business and was an avid outdoorsman. His favorite sports were hunting and fishing. On behalf of the City Council, I would like to send our deepest condolences to Nancy and her family. Our second adjournment is in honor of Michael Makey, a Westlake High School math teacher who suffered injuries in a traffic accident 2 weeks ago. Michael graduated from Rigetti High School in Santa Maria. After earning a bachelor's degree from San Diego State University, Michael began his teaching career, and in 2002 he came to Westlake High School. He was an advisor for the Parent-Teacher-Student Association and for the school's student study teams. He was loved by his students, who saw him as caring, fun, and positive. He had the unique ability to connect with students and guide them through their academic growth. Michael was an outdoor enthusiast and passionate about road and mountain biking. I would like to express our sincerest sympathies to Michael's family. Our community was fortunate to have Michael educating our youth, and we appreciate all that he contributed. We are adjourning this evening to our next regular meeting on November 18th. Good night, everybody.